Most people never notice the exact moment their power begins to weaken. There is no argument, no confrontation, no visible defeat. It fades quietly. Authority rarely collapses dramatically. It erodes through small, reasonable behaviors. One of the most dangerous of those behaviors is explaining yourself. From an early age, people are taught that explanation is a virtue. Explain yourself clearly. Explain your intentions. Explain your reasons. They are told that explanation equals intelligence, that clarity earns respect, that being understood creates trust. This belief feels mature, it feels responsible, it feels socially correct. But power does not operate on social rules. It operates on perception, and perception begins to shift. The moment you explain yourself under pressure, the first time you do it, nothing obvious happens. No one challenges you, no one argues back, no one calls you weak, but something subtle is registered. The other person notices that silence unsettles you. They notice urgency in your tone. They sense discomfort in being misunderstood. You never say these things out loud, but the signal is sent anyway. And once perception adjusts, it rarely returns to its original state. Most people explain themselves to reduce tension. They speak to feel accepted. They speak to stabilize uncertainty. They speak to control how they are seen. But power does not seek comfort. Power allows discomfort to exist. When you explain yourself, you acknowledge pressure. You may not feel it consciously. You may not intend it, but the act itself confirms something important. You silently accept that someone else has the right question. Authority does not come from being understood. It comes from being internally settled. People with real authority do not rush to clarify themselves. They do not panic when misunderstood. They do not feel urgency when silence follows their decisions. They allow uncertainty to remain, and uncertainty creates weight. When nothing is explained, the human mind becomes active. It searches for meaning. It fills gaps. It begins to assume. And the human mind dislikes uncertainty more than disagreement. Disagreement can be challenged. Uncertainty must be endured. This is why silence feels heavier than argument. When you do not explain yourself, others are forced to interpret you without guidance. Some assume confidence. Some assume strategy. Some assume depth. Some feel unsettled. None of these reactions weaken your position. Explaining yourself, however, does something dangerous. It shifts the frame. The interaction stops being about your presence and becomes about your reasoning. Words invite evaluation. Presence commands attention. The moment people begin evaluating your reasons, authority starts leaking, not because your reasons are wrong, but because the act of explanation places you inside the discussion rather than above it. This is why authority is often felt before it is named. Hierarchy is rarely announced. It is sensed, and perception does not reward those who speak the most. It rewards those who remain composed under pressure. Every explanation reveals something internal, a hesitation, a doubt, a need to be accepted. Even when the explanation is logical, even when it is correct, correctness does not create authority. Certainty does, and certainty is communicated through restraint, not justification. Most people believe power is built by convincing others. In reality, power is built by remaining unmoved, while others seek movement. And this is where most people begin to lose control, without ever realizing it. They explain once, then again, then more carefully. Each time trying to restore the original perception. But perception does not work that way. The more you explain, the more explanation is expected. And expectation is dependency. Once others expect access to your reasoning, authority begins to negotiate, and negotiated authority is already weakened. This is where the erosion begins, quietly, reasonably socially acceptable, and by the time people notice it, the position is already compromised. Once explanation becomes expected, silence starts to feel dangerous. Not to others, to you. This is where most people make a mistake. They interpret discomfort as a signal to speak. They assume tension must be resolved. They believe silence means losing control. In reality, reaction is the loss. Machiavellian psychology understands something most people ignore. The person who reacts is no longer setting the tempo. Tempo is power. When you explain yourself too quickly, you hand tempo to the other person. You let them decide when clarification is needed. When pressure is applied, when the interaction moves forward, silence does the opposite. Silence keeps tempo with you. You decide if speaking is necessary at all. This control is felt immediately. Even if nothing is said, people begin to slow down around you. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before pushing further. They become aware of themselves. This shift is subtle, but it is decisive, because hesitation is the beginning of respect. Not admiration, not approval, respect. Most people misunderstand this moment. They think silence is passive. It isn't. Silence is an active refusal to participate in unnecessary evaluation. When you explain yourself, you invite others to judge your reasoning. They begin to decide whether your reasons are acceptable, whether they agree, whether they approve. The moment approval enters the interaction, authority begins to slip. Silence removes that approval cycle. When you stay silent, intentions remain unclear, and unclear intentions create distance. Distance is not coldness. Distance is respect forming. This is why individuals with authority rarely reveal their full reasoning, not because they are hiding, but because exposure weakens position. The more people understand your internal process, the easier it becomes to challenge you. Silence protects that process. It keeps you unreadable. Unreadability slows others down. When people cannot predict your response, they become careful. They calculate. They observe, they wait. Waiting shifts power. Most people react quickly because they fear losing control. They believe silence equals loss. But reaction is loss. Reaction gives away leverage. Machiavellian psychology recognizes that power often grows, not through action, but through non-reaction, the ability to remain unmoved while others seek movement, is one of the clearest signals of authority. This is why people begin to test you when you stop explaining. They challenge lightly. They probe indirectly. They wait for a reaction. This is not confrontation. It is measurement. They are measuring whether your silence is temporary or whether it is stable if you break and explain. The test is over. If you remain calm, the dynamic shifts. Stability signals confidence. Confidence does not need confirmation. It does not need reassurance. It does not need to defend itself. When people realize that pressure does not move you, they stop applying it, not because they agree with you, but because it no longer works. This is how authority begins to reform quietly, without dominance, without argument, through consistency of composure. When your reactions become predictable in one way only, calm, measured, unmoved, others adapt around you. They lower their voice. They adjust their expectations. They hesitate before pushing further, not because you demanded respect, because you made pressure ineffective. And ineffective pressure disappears on its own. Why misunderstanding can strengthen authority? Most people fear being misunderstood. They rush to correct impressions. They clarify intentions. They explain context. They believe misunderstanding damages reputation. Machiavellian psychology understands the opposite. Misunderstanding only threatens weak positions. Strong positions are not dependent on interpretation. When you are internally settled, misunderstanding becomes irrelevant. This is why powerful individuals allow others to misunderstand them. They do not correct every assumption. They do not clarify every motive. They do not chase accuracy in perception, because accuracy invites debate. Debate invites negotiation, and negotiation weakens authority. When people misunderstand you, they are forced to make assumptions without guidance. Some assume confidence, some assume strategy. Some assume indifference, some feel unsettled. What matters is not which assumption they choose. What matters is that they are reacting to you, rather than you reacting to them. This reverses the psychological direction of power. Most people try to control perception by explaining. In doing so, they place themselves inside the frame. They become a participant in how they are judged. Silence removes you from that position. You stop managing perception and allow perception to manage itself. This creates distance. Distance is not disconnection. Distance is authority forming. When people cannot easily read you, they slow down. They hesitate before challenging. They consider consequences more carefully. They question their own interpretations. This internal questioning is where power consolidates, because power is not about domination. It is about hesitation. Hesitation in others means leverage for you. This is why silence feels heavier than explanation. Explanation closes gaps. Silence keeps them open, and open gaps demand mental energy. People expend effort trying to interpret you. They analyze tone. They replay interactions. They search for meaning. You do nothing. They do the work. Machiavellian psychology recognizes this as asymmetric effort. When others expend cognitive energy on you while you remain still, power accumulates. Most people reverse this dynamic. They exhaust themselves trying to be understood, while others passively consume explanations. This is inverted power. Silence flips it back. Another reason misunderstanding strengthens authority is that it filters people. Those who require constant clarity often require constant reassurance. Those who become uncomfortable with silence often depend on access. To feel secure when you stop providing access. These individuals reveal themselves. They press for explanations. They demand clarification. They escalate emotionally. This reaction is informative. It shows who relies on control through conversation. When you do not comply, you deny them that control. Without confrontation, your position rises. Others observe this. They notice who adapts and who reacts. Adaptation signals respect. Reaction signals weakness. Over time, people adjust their behavior around you. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before questioning. They stop assuming access to your reasoning. This adjustment happens without instruction. It is not enforced. It is accepted.